Hello, everybody, and welcome to an overview of Essentials of Social Media Marketing, Chapter 13, Launching a Social Media Marketing Campaign. Today is going to just focus on Section 3 of the textbook, not looking at any of the other sections. Sections 1 and 2 are a good overview, a good connection to marketing principles, specifically the AIDA funnel. That's a good segue, but we've also already talked about the AIDA funnel in this course, and so I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. Additionally, section 4 covers a lot of examples of successful social media campaigns, including the very successful ALS Bucket Challenge, which you may remember from the mid 2010s. I actually don't even remember the year that was, 2013 or 2014. And a quick note on that one specifically. That is a great example of a campaign that didn't only raise a lot of money, but also has had some tangible takeaways. And thank you to one of your classmates that had sent me specifically an article that shows that the money raised from that has actually contributed to some major breakthroughs in ALS research. So that is one really positive example of the power of social media campaigns. And I remember taking part in it myself. If I can find my ALS bucket video, I'll share it with all of you as well. It's been a long time, but I did it right in downtown Detroit, right in the middle of the summer, in the kind of in the middle of traffic. So if I can, if I can find it, it's been a while. I will be sure to share it with all of you, just as a nostalgia thing, and also so that you can see social media campaigns in action. So let's start here. I am going to look at the slides today, not actually the textbook. I find that the slides actually do better today. There's a lot of steps here. And first off, let's differentiate a campaign from a strategy. Chapter 3 in the courseware looks at a larger social media strategy, includes all of the steps that go into it. So you have brand identity, you have roles and responsibilities. Honestly, it's a lot of what we're going to talk about here, but here we have more tactical, specific elements, and they all connect back to the larger social media strategy. The one big difference between a general social media strategy and a campaign is that a campaign has a beginning and an end. A campaign that doesn't have an end is just a strategy, whereas when you're looking at a finite campaign, you have the lead up to it, during the campaign, and then you have what happens after the fact. And so if there's one thing to remember about knowing the difference between those two, it's that. It's the element of time. Now, many of the most successful social media campaigns have actually outlived the strategies that are associated with them. When you think about, when you think about companies like Microsoft, when you think about companies, when you think about a lot of nonprofits that can raise awareness, such as ALS, you remember campaigns more than you remember the general strategy. But a lot of times, a successful campaign can really drive a strategy into the future and propel its growth into perpetual motion. When you think about a lot of, say, fast food restaurants, airline companies, industries that we've talked about before, we think of them as having these strategies, but really, a lot of them have started with smaller campaigns that kind of jump started their and kind of gave rise to a greater um, a greater strategy. And one example, you look at Wendy's as that's always kind of the shining beacon of fast food social media success. But if we look back, Wendy's wasn't always like that. And in a lot of situations, I can't speak to if Wendy's did this or not, but there's a good chance that their brand pivot to this edgy kind of talk back, cynical type of a trash talking brand, there's a very good chance that that started on a trial basis in what could be considered a campaign format, and then after seeing its successes, turned it into a permanent strategy. We're not going to talk about the transition from campaign to strategy today. We're just going to talk about campaigns, but I just wanted to mention that as well. So we look at this first slide. You have all these things that go into before a campaign. We know most of these. I'm not going to define really any of these into too much depth. One thing I will say about this is not every campaign is going to have all of these. Now, every campaign will require goals, ideas, themes, audience, incentives, if there are any, social networks, and especially a timeline. But you don't have to do all of these ahead of time. Now, it's great to have them, yes, and in when you think about exams for this course, uh, yeah, there's none that you have to forget per se. But if you're developing a social media campaign, don't think that you need to go through every single one of these and make sure they're all checked off. It's great to have them all, but in order to get that minimum viable product, you don't actually need all of these. Um, but if we look at a couple of them specifically, let's talk about establishing the goals, right? What does that mean? That is what you hope to accomplish. And that's probably the number one thing to do is if you come up with, hey, I want to do a social media campaign, generally the idea comes out of having a goal. If the higher ups, a lot actually, also, you think about, okay, where does the idea for a campaign come from? It it comes from any number of different areas. Sometimes it's the CEO or a higher up saying like, hey, we should do this. And then the social media team taking it from there. Sometimes it's a business need where the business is like, hey, our marketing has been really failing lately. We need to really get a kickstart going. Sometimes a social media campaign can help jumpstart that. Other times it kind of goes hand in hand with a product launch. That's a big one is, hey, we have a product coming up here. We want to drum up some awareness around it. Then there might be a campaign that goes with that. And other times it's just that you want to improve a specific KPI. You see this a lot of times with public companies who they need a win going into next quarter's earnings call or something. You may see a social media campaign that is designed to really kind of provide a win. And they don't always end up in wins, but these are the campaigns that you see that lead to more email subscribers, greater web traffic, more leads, numbers that can then be reported back to shareholders. And obviously those help the business, those help the bottom line, those help general sentiment around the business. But at the same time, social media campaigns can really have a wide range of impacts and applications. Now, when we talked about the AIDA funnel earlier, whoops, did not mean to go that far. When you talk about the AIDA funnel, you really want to think about where specifically do you want social media subscribers to, like, where do you want this to end up? So I will step back to the AIDA model, AIDA funnel here. Do you want them, yes, you want people to take a specific action, but what do you want that action to be? And social media campaigns generally start up here in the attention spot where you're going to reach a new audience. And whatever the action is, it's not a purchase. Generally, when we talk about the AIDA funnel, we talk about the action step is when a lead becomes a customer of some sort. And in my content marketing textbook, we talk about that specifically. Hey, in the AIDA funnel, generally from a larger business perspective, the action step is the process of becoming a customer or becoming a customer again, like a repeat customer. But in a social media strategy, we think of kind of the AIDA model being a microcosm here, where the action is just a conversion. It could be signing up for an email. It could be downloading a white paper. It could be just following your account on social media. It depends on what it is that you're looking for. It could be user generated content. If we can get 1,000 tweets that talk about our that include our hashtag. That's a successful campaign. Things like that can really show social media growth, and it's often something that you can then report back as something tangible that you can turn into something that you can utilize for your business. So, let's move forward a couple of slides here. When you're picking a campaign idea and a theme and type, and I see that the table is on top of the text here, that's not good. Let's look at these different elements here. Social media contest ideas, there's a bazillion of them. And if you've read the content marketing courseware, there's a great tie in here to the chapter on events, downloads, incentives, specifically user generated content. All of these things in this left column here apply really, really well to the idea of a campaign idea and a theme. Now, when you think about social media, and these are contests specifically, but when you think about content that is shared on social media, you know, a social media campaign does not need to be something where, say, you give away money or you give away product or something. It can be as simple as, hey, we created this quiz. What the one that I think I always go back to is, hey, which house in Hogwarts are you? Going back to Harry Potter, like let's get 100,000 people to do that. Things like that are really kind of like those are campaigns. You get people to take that really can increase brand awareness, more of the conversation around it, and it can also help to an increased amount of leads. Now, you have specifically with the Hogwarts sorting hat thing, you need to get creative with that one. But social media campaigns don't need to be something where money changes hands. It also doesn't need to be something where we just get new email subscribers. It can be very surface level. And the thought process behind that is really campaigns are are at a at its most basic level just intended to get more engagement and get more action on the account level. If you have an account that's really been slowing down, man, our Instagram account has not been growing. We're seeing a decrease in likes. We're not really getting much in the way of comments. A campaign on social media is a good way to get that moving again. So, again, there does need to be a goal. There does need to be a theme. There does need to be, an idea here, but it can be more fun and loose, like what you see here with these ideas. Now, the table on the right, that is just kind of like, what are the different things that you're trying to get out of this? Like, hey, we can get their emails, we can get information on their demographic, we can get content from them. Yes, we can increase our social media following. The idea behind this table is you can check off what kind of contest specifically will lead to different payoffs. And if you look at the 6 examples here under campaign type, you can see what they can all lead to. Now, these will be different for different businesses. So just because the photo contest here, just because the photo contest shows all 4 boxes, all 4 columns checked, doesn't mean that yours has to have all 4 columns checked. If you think of an influencer campaign, for example, like you can run an influencer campaign where where you can capture emails, where the goal is to capture emails. Like you can get where the influencer can share a link and then it goes to a landing page and then somebody has to submit their data in order to get some sort of download. Like you can change like what the outcomes are and like how those work. Obviously, the goal for all of these should be to increase your social following. Any of them that don't have that box checked, you probably need to re-examine. But at the same time, like if your main goal is to acquire emails, you can find a way for all of these campaign types to lead to that step. So again, yeah, the takeaway here, this is an example of a table. These can be influenced by what it is that you are doing. Now, when you're identifying your target audience, you do need to think about not just the people that you target on social, but a niche within that audience. When you do this, the key determinant here is what are their most used social media networks, because that's where really you need to meet them. The idea is not to bring a new audience to an existing social network, but to meet your audience where they are. And then you have the campaign budget and resources. This is kind of why I like using these slides, because this breaks down the campaign budget and resources really well and the five different things that go into it. And there's more than five, but these are probably the five most important. One, what's the cost? Is there going to be a cost in terms of the incentives? What's the giveaway going to be? Is there going to be any shipping costs? Are we sending anything? Are there other tertiary costs or ancillary costs on the side? Are we going to do any advertising? Usually, yes, but sometimes it's not necessary. What employees are going to be involved in this and what are their roles? What kind of tools do we need? Is this something that you use Hootsuite for? Can you do it all natively through the various social networks, or is there something else? And then, um, kind of going back to the employees, what are the responsibilities for each individual person? The campaign parameters, this is more of the fine print. This is the logistics side. This is where you say, okay, we're going to do a contest where people have to submit, I don't know, they have to submit their best photo of, what they do in a normal day using our product. But you need to have parameters. Can everybody only submit once? Can they submit multiple times? Can they does it have to be only them? Does it have to be can groups enter? Like, can brand accounts enter? At the same time, I've been involved in those where in contests where you just have to vote through social media, like, hey, whoever gets the most likes and comments is going to end up winning the contest. Well, what does that mean? That, like, is that just total likes and comments? Are there other channels? What if people share them? Are those counting? Um, what if people create their own unique posts? Like, how are you going to define what counts as a vote? And the parameters are really important here, because this is where controversy can come in. So when you are creating a contest ahead of time, you really need to know what is going to, if there's an incentive involved, what exactly is going to fly and what's not going to fly, what counts and what doesn't count. Because these guidelines, these parameters, these sweepstakes, this is where you can get into trouble. This is where, you can go viral for all the wrong reasons. And this is where you can end up with negative brand awareness, to be perfectly honest, where your brand equity can take a hit. And so by defining these up front, like, you need to do a very good job of making sure that all your loopholes are covered. And in general, you don't leave yourself open to any problems. So that's the thought process behind the campaign parameters. Now, if there are incentives, it says here, in order to encourage user participation, incentives should be provided. I mean, yes, but not all organizations, not all brands have that opportunity. Now, on one side, you can make an incentive. It doesn't have to be driven by, money. It doesn't have to be something that costs. It can be as simple as, hey, like, we'll share the best examples. We'll talk about the best examples on a video. Like, it can just be PR and shout outs if it has to be. Again, you're obviously going to probably get better results if there is some sort of tangible value in here. We live in a pretty materialistic world on social media, but at the same time, that's not absolutely necessary. Um, maybe it's a discount, maybe it's something related to the brand. If it's a lot of restaurants and food places, they'll give out a free lunch or a free meal or something. Um, $100 gift card to the restaurant or something. Things like that that don't inherently cost too much money, but they're helpful. That's kind of that can still be helpful, and people that already follow you, like anybody that enters that contest, is going to see value in that. And going back to the theme of the course and of social media in general, how can the incentives provide value to those who are entering it? And now we go back to what we talked about before with the target audience, which is where the campaign is going to live. Generally, it's going to be on social media, but you also need to include something on the website. And this is something where I personally have found a lot of businesses come up short, is that they'll include a mention of it on the website, and it'll be on this like hidden internal page, and then that'll be it. But remember, people should be already going to the website in general, like on a regular basis. And when that happens, that's another opportunity to connect with individuals to participate in the campaign. So the company website is a great opportunity. If you have an app, that's good too. Microsite here in the definite, what that means is sometimes businesses will create a small mini website that is dedicated to the campaign or the product or whatever it is that they're trying to incentivize. Now, as a result, this is a great idea, but at the same time, you need to make sure that the microsite is linked back to the main company website, because any brand that is going to undergo that's going to take on some sort of social media campaign is likely already getting traffic to their company's site. And so there needs to be an opportunity to convert those individuals into participants. Microsites are a great example. They're a great way to give more life and better legs to the campaign, but you just need to make sure that you are still linking everything together so that you can bring in as many opportunities to participate as possible. And now you have the social network. You want to make sure that you're meeting the target audience where they are. So, say your target audience are for your campaign is an older crowd. You want an older audience to participate. This is, I'm just, just to be kind of ridiculous and kind of like overly obvious. Say it's specifically for retirees, show us your retirement home or something. Show us where you live. Show us what you're doing, now that you're not working anymore. TikTok's probably not the place for that. Instagram probably isn't the place for that. This is probably more of a Facebook contest because that's where they live. Now, when you think about also the submission, you want to think about what can I reasonably expect from my target audience. If it's a younger crowd, videos I think are perfectly fine. User generated content video is pretty normal. When you think about an older crowd, probably don't want to expect anything super technical or time consuming. That's where a photo could work. That's where a text submission could work. You want to make sure that you are making it as easy as possible for the specific audience that you are reaching. And then, of course, we have the timeline. I mean, start date, end date, pretty straightforward. But when we think about the timeline, we want to think about a calendar as well. In that, are you going to do anything before the official start? Are you going to tease it ahead of time? Are you going to share results after the end date? Are you going to go back and like weeks after it ends, do something in terms of sharing some other entries or some honorable mentions? Are you going to do a feature? Are you going to learn more about the people who win? The classic old fashioned, I think it was a Century One. This real estate company would give away like thousands and thousands of dollars to these people randomly. They'd show up at their door with a giant check. And then they'd never go back and see, like, what are they doing now? Like, it's like with lottery winners. Somebody won $1 billion earlier this year. Where are they now? Hopefully they're staying anonymous. But if you were if I'm the lottery company, I want to know what happened to them. Probably nothing good. But if you want to learn more about that, just Google what happens to lottery winners. But you want to be able to have a timeline and a content calendar that is not just confined to the dates of the campaign. You want to think about how the campaign, like what does it result in later? We talked about ALS Bucket Challenge. It's been 8 years or something. Now that something's happened, it might be this is a good chance for all these nonprofits that were involved to go back and say, hey, here was the result of the fruits of your labor and everybody participating in the Ice Bucket Challenge. Like this is a great turnaround. Great for technology and for modern medicine, things like that. And also when you think about the assets and the content calendar, you also want to remember the cross posting across your different channels. Just because Facebook is where we're going to is where you would run a campaign for older people doesn't mean you can't mention it on the other channels. Twitter might not be where you're going to host it, but you can still put a couple tweets out talking about it and putting a link over to where it is. you may want to focus on Facebook, but if you're active on other social networks, you can utilize those too. And then there's the old, setting up listening streams. That's how you're paying attention to it. That's pretty straightforward. Are you using hashtags? Are you using something else? What is it that you're doing in order to see what's happening? This is important if people have to submit like votes. If you're looking at people that are voting via likes, shares, comments, how are you going to capture those all? What happens if somebody shares a post and then you capture all those and then share from that and that? So you really got to think about all of those together and how you're going to capture everything. Now, not as much going on during and after the campaign. You see here, you promote it, you monitor, and you adjust. We've talked about this in the social media strategy development, where yes, put out content like the student tweet here is, and at the same time, review, engage in conversation, but make sure to make adjustments as you have to go. If you realize that there's a typo somewhere, just make the adjustment and move on from there. If you realize that you didn't clarify all of the um, policies and the rules up front, clarify those rules and policies. But then what happens after the campaign, make sure that you know to announce the winner, do your follow-up, and then analyze. This is the last one. I'm not going to go through all of these questions, but these are good questions to consider when you are analyzing the success or the failure of a campaign. How did it perform? Did it meet your goals, et cetera, et cetera? It's good to answer a lot of these questions, because if you want to do this again in the future, you'll have a place to note where you can improve, where you should make adjustments. And specifically, if this is going to be an annual thing, which usually campaigns end up happening again and again, at least the successful ones, like they try to recreate them at another time, you want to be sure that you can document everything that worked, what didn't work, where it can improve, and what new things you can add. Also, if you look at these questions, the one I think are the most important is, did the brand perception change during the campaign? This is where you can look at a campaign and say, hey, based on the brand perception changes and improvements, I think this is something we could make as a permanent change and turn it into more of a strategy. Now, how are you going to do that? You want to use data-driven analytics. We will look at that separately at another time, but you want to make sure that you have some numbers to back up any claims that you make. If you have to go back to the shareholders or to the higher ups or even just your boss with the final analysis of a campaign, you want to make sure that you have some key performance indicators along with you. That is one thing that none of these questions really address. Is upfront, you want to think about, what are the 2 or 3 numbers that I can influence and that will tell me if it was a success? Some campaigns, immediately, oh man, this is going to be huge. This is already a success. Other campaigns, it's a little bit more difficult to tell. If you're looking at hashtag usage on one, hashtag usage isn't as big of a campaign driver as it used to be, mainly because hashtags aren't utilized as much as they once were. Hashtags today are really only used on Instagram and TikTok now. Twitter has eliminated the need for hashtags because the algorithm can capture any words. And on Facebook, if anything, hashtags are damaging to posts, and I'll share that another time as well. LinkedIn, I mean, they're okay, but they're not really used. They're not, people don't click on hashtags to see content. They really just use hashtags to further their own content. So, hashtags may be a bad example, but say one of your examples are, hey, we just want more traffic to our new product page. And if you can see a spike on your Google Analytics over the course of 30 days during a campaign, that's a win. And when you think about all the numbers that could go into this, obviously the best number possible is something on the bottom line. If a social media campaign leads to more revenue, that's a huge, huge, huge W, especially if it's actual profit and not just revenue, where you say, hey, we're going to spend $10,000 on social media advertising on this, and you end up with $15,000 in new revenue. That's net profit. But that's not the norm for social media campaigns. Rather, social media campaigns are driven to drive brand awareness, followers, um, and just general engagements for a brand. And if you can show that, you'll have a win for your social media campaign. So that is where I'll wrap it up today. It ended up, as always, a longer video than I expected, but it took me a while to go through all of these slides. So any questions, as always, feel free to reach out, and I will see you next time.